shows now. That's right. Oh,
That's right.
5:59.
Oh,
Right.
call at 6 o'clock, January 20th, 2026. I now call the meeting to order. And we have our agenda. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have anyone?
A motion to approve.
Anyone second?
A second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
For Sue, that was Hugh and Lauren. Are the recording?
Excellent. Okay, my favorite part, citizen comments.
Anything, citizen?
nope, I'm good.
And we do welcome citizens to come join us if they would like to give input. And they can also probably write in an email.
Yeah, there's comments
Okay.
on the website. Yep.
Great. So we are on to talk about the local option tax. Would you like to head
Sure.
that up, Julie?
This is really just to let you know that the select board did vote to add this as an article on the town warning this year. It is a vote from, excuse me, we vote special questions from the floor, so this will be a floor vote. It is not an Australian ballot vote. So whoever is in the room at town meeting is who's going to be making this decision. So if you have people on your side, I just encourage them to come and be part of town meeting and part of the discussion. Select board will be signing the warning tomorrow night, and that gets.
And go over the date again, I'm sorry.
Town meeting
Yeah.
is March 2nd, the Monday, March 2nd.
And yes or no, move ahead.
It's a yes or no.
And so then if it's, what does it mean either way?
So if you, Preston may want, Preston has been talking to the Secretary of State for me on this, but if it gets approved, then it's a couple of quarters before that actually starts taking effect. But what it is it is 1% tax on rooms, meals, and consumed alcohol. So alcohol consumed at restaurants, basically.
Right, but that just whoever's at that meeting gets to vote if this thing happens?
Yes, we vote special questions
seems
from the floor.
Great, let's.
We vote special questions from the floor in Chester. We do not vote those special questions.
Yeah, if you ever want
outside of
something
that.
passed in Chester, get it on
Yeah.
that. You want to get it on that.
Most importantly, have people show up that
People need to show up
Yeah.
on either side of it. People need to show up and ask their
So
questions.
this is a 1% tax that we talked about that's going to fund the housing commission in general.
Correct.
There've been a few people who feel very strongly against this.
Correct.
And I would imagine they're also having some positive thoughts about it voting from the floor because it can be easier.
Correct. It can be easier to shoot it down as well. Absolutely. Absolutely.
to note, this coincides with some legislation they're trying to pass about adding a tax to any sugary drinks too, right?
I think there is something in the legislature about that.
Of why are you taxing if I drink 2 Cokes a day? Oh my God, I'm paying $100 a year.
Right.
So
Yeah.
people don't like tax.
Correct. And the people that
They
are,
like service.
Yeah, right.
most of the people that are opposing the local options taxes is just that. It's they understand the need. I think that's what we've heard. They understand the need. They understand what's trying to be accomplished. But just another tax, which we all get, right? Like it's another tax.
Who stands up in favor of it from the town standpoint to describe what it is, or is it just written in the?
So there's the article.
Mhm.
The select board can certainly discuss it, but I think that's why I have it on this agenda item is I think the housing commission needs to get behind it.
Yeah,
And I think what needs to happen is when this article comes up, members of the housing commission should be who stands up and really supports it. The select board will be there as well. But to be honest, we have a select board member or two who are not crazy about this being on the ballot. So I think it would be great for the housing commission at this point to take it. It's going to benefit you guys. So that's also, I gave you guys a copy of, a couple of select board members had asked for, like, what is a budget of the housing commission? Well, that's really hard to do because it's a shot in the dark. But I gave you guys a copy of what we had put together for them of expenses that we know are gonna be coming up as we move forward with much of anything. And so this is a document that we, could have readily available. This is a document I would refer to because that is the question that is out there. Well, what are they using this tax for? Are we subsidizing housing now in Chester? I mean, there's all kinds of conversation. So I think a presentation of this, of some form, before the vote, would be a good idea. Much like, I do with the budget. I do a PowerPoint, we explain it, we talk about it, and then the vote can go through.
Why don't I propose that if you want to collect it, or if people can send them to me, third party, where it hits home, like I can go to the Chester Andover School and say, have you any people that you wanted to employ that you couldn't because they couldn't find housing?
Mhm.
That's going to go a long way to have a third party. This is close to home. This is reality. This has just happened in the past couple of months.
Mhm.
So if anyone has third party stories that they want to gather, I think that would be a good thing to stand up and explain that to the public. That's the true need.
Agreed. Does anybody want to take on kind of putting together a presentation?
I'll-
Do you want?
I'll gather the info, and then if someone wants to work with me to massage it to something that's presentable. And if anyone can please submit any stories, that would be great.
Can I ask when, maybe my head was in the sand, this is news to me about this tax coming up on the ballot. So this is a state tax that the state is putting forth for the towns to individually adopt if they want. The town collects it or the state collects it?
So the 1% local options tax, the town, a municipality can
I'm sorry,
vote.
did we talk about this before and I totally missed it? Okay.
Yes, we have.
Sorry.
It's okay. This is one of the things we talked about a few times. But that's okay. I'll explain it to you. So the state allows 3 different avenues to collect 1% option tax. And one of those avenues, one is full retail sales, which we're not doing. But the one that we are focusing on is rooms, meals, and consumed alcohol. So what happens is the state, when a business owner who falls into this tax collects the tax, they pay it to the state with their other taxes that they pay. The state then has a formula and the town gets 75% of that 1%. Comes back to the town. So Preston did some calculations. Chester will get probably close to 60,000, 70,000 a year is what we would get. But it says that's it. Yeah, so it's a number. I mean, it's a number that we can really do something with.
Yeah.
That's how local options tax. And many municipalities have them.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the excellent selling points for it is, and I don't know who, maybe it was Preston, but or maybe you, who pulled together the information from some area towns that have done this, and all of the people connected with it who have talked about what a positive thing it has been for the town, and most of those people not seeing a lot of downside to it. And I think that's really helpful for people to hear that, our neighbors did this
Right.
and the ground didn't open up and swallow our businesses and ruin them. So,
Logo has it.
yeah.
Yes.
And if I can jump, if I can jump in, the Telegraph actually had a little blurb that said that area towns are not unhappy with it once they pass it. That was last week.
Who wants to head that up and gather that info?
Well, it said, I think it was gathered by the Telegraph.
Telegraph?
I can look for the article and send it to you, Carl.
And I think it's also showing the numbers, on $100 meal, 10 cents.
Dollar.
A dollar, sorry, I did that backwards. $1, yeah. On $100 meal will now become 101. So people see that. The opposition that I think we've seen is the fact it's not even the dollar amount, it's just another tax.
It's another
Yeah.
tax.
On businesses that are already taxed pretty high with the rooms, meals tax, food tax, the alcohol tax, and there's one more thing that they now have to do. So
Yeah. But what we heard, what Sean found in talking to some of those other businesses from other towns that found that it really wasn't that much of a burden because the tax are already collecting and paid. So it's not, it's just one more.
What do they have to do? Software updates, their
I think it is.
point of, for the
I think the
sales?
point of sale stuff, yeah.
And then the town can discretionarily use that any way they want, or it's just for housing
It's
stuff?
just for housing. The
Okay.
article has it for housing. The other important thing I should say is the select board put a sunset on it. So they said for 10 years, we're gonna have this local option tax for 10 years. In 10 years, we'll reevaluate.
Other towns can use it for other purposes.
Yeah, it just depends on how you vote it.
Specifically for housing,
Yeah,
yeah.
Specifically for the housing.
I think some of the other towns did set it up to be used for multiple things.
A lot of municipalities use their local option taxes to buy down your budget. That's what most of it is.
When would it take effect if it passed?
It's a couple quarters, right, Preston? When
Yeah.
when it become effective, it's like a couple quarters, right? Before it becomes effective.
Well, I think what they say is that within the quarter that you pass it, they get it in the system, and then you actually don't get your payment until the quarter after.
Okay, that's what it was.
But it would start assessing. I mean, if we passed it in March, it would probably start assessing in like June. And then we'd get paid our first check in maybe, what is it, October, September?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I'll add to this conversation, when I thought about it is, as a consumer, I have never made a decision about where I'm gonna go to eat, where I'm gonna go to stay, because it was a tax or it wasn't. It's not like, I'm not gonna stay in Vermont because they've got that crazy rooms and meals tax. I'm gonna go stay in New Hampshire. I'm not gonna eat at this restaurant. I'm gonna go over there and eat that. I've never had that, but that's not anything I've ever done. So if I'm like most people, and most people are making decisions about how they're gonna spend their discretionary money, they're not looking at what's on
No,
there.
but also, if you've ever gone somewhere, stayed in a room and it's this much, and then the local tax for the state, or it might be 11%. So if this is just buried in there, it doesn't seem to be making that much difference, but there is a state tax for some of the lodging. Yeah, so.
And the other group that came out and had a few issues with this was, of course, this will affect short-term rentals. Short-term rentals will get hit with this 1%. Well, I mean, the person stay. But yeah, so there was a couple people from that group, I think, that.
I think hand in hand, you talk about we're being progressive in that there are towns that are asleep at the wheel and you cannot have this tax. And then you wake up 8 years, 10 years later and realize I should have. So, kudos to the town and to this committee and to those that are forward thinking to be able to fix a problem and not just kick the can down the road. So we have to focus on that as well.
Because if you look at it, if it's 10 years that, each year, it might net $60,000 for them. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's a number we can do something.
Yeah.
$500,000 over 10 years would
Yeah.
be very nice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mostly paid by publicity.
Correct. And so you've got the 60,000 from this, and you've got roughly 25 or 30,000 from the short-term rental registration fee. So, it's potentially $100,000 to have a commission fund each year.
Any other discussions on the local tax, option tax? Okay, we can move on to item number 4, low-income housing tax credit update.
Preston, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think Julie and I thought Peter brought up these numbers, but he was talking about them verbally. And we thought we should just come up with some real numbers. And so what I have before you is some cut and paste from various things I found online. Uncle Sam, as they always do, said that you define what is low income based by the income of your county. And it sure seems low. And I kind of thought, I guess it's low everywhere. But I did talk to a professional in this field who said some parts of the country, the income by county is pretty high, and what's low income is pretty high. He said here in Vermont, your high-end wage earners aren't residents. And so when you look at the census data, the average income in the county is kind of low. So then uh, our definition of what is a low-income earner is low. So, I mean, I think, Peter was right to bring it up. This is a true problem that um, only people, like we said before, many teachers and policemen and road crew members and whatever may start out too high to even get into this program. I will mention, once you get in, you can stay, but you just get less and less benefit. But in order to get in, you have to have, these kinds of numbers. The other thing is that quite a lot of projects have a blend of income sources, and so they can use the federal tax credits for parts of it, not for all of it. I will just say, I did in my talks, we're always struggling with affordable housing. There seems to be a new buzzword, accessible housing, if that makes any of you feel better. And the definition of accessible housing is the gap between market rate housing and what the federal government defines as low income housing. But there it is. And I will say also that I kind of wondered about senior housing, and I put that on the bottom. If you're going to use the federal tax credits, it's the same low-income housing formula. And as you know, many seniors that love to downsize, that love to move into senior housing, but they have pensions and retirement funds and other investments that just throw them way out of the ability to do something that is through federal tax credits. So I think this exercise was meant just as a reality check to say that this is part of what we have to deal with.
Without the low income housing tax credit, would that make it less appealing for a developer? I mean, it seems like if this is pretty low, and filling whatever 20% of the project with 50% or less. I'm just wondering if the people who are developing have to, I don't know, bet that there's going to be this is going to be fulfilled and the credit will be valid, or is that like set out at the beginning to say you're definitely getting this tax credit? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. I'm not sure how that works. Do you know how that works?
I think developers usually are the ones, like the Wyndham and
Apply
Windsor
for it.
Housing Trust, they apply and they know what the strings attached
Okay.
are.
Yeah.
And they, so I think a lot of the private developers probably aren't accessing these tax credits.
Yeah.
I think this is more the housing trust and people like them that are doing on purpose affordable housing complexes.
And if it said that, 80% of the units have to be occupied with people at these numbers, I'd find that very daunting.
Yes.
But looking at it saying 20% at the 50% and 40% at 60% or less doesn't feel quite so impossible. And I, thinking about this as this is these are our local numbers and it's the median and not the mean. So that this is what people are earning. And while that may feel very low to those of us who are earning in a very different kind of bracket, these numbers are not made up. This is what the median number of people in this area are earning, which means that there's a significant number of people who qualify for this, who all need a place to live. So.
But no
Yeah,
one,
I mean, to just make an example, I would guess that a clerk working at Smitty's would probably be able to qualify for housing like this, or at least certainly in many businesses in town.
Yes.
but no one would be above 80% of it. At least 40%.
Well, this is where, Julie did hand out this budget, which we felt a little awkward creating because it is kind of pulled out of the air. But we did put in a line of $30,000 for a real estate development consultant because we need help with this stuff. And Hugh and I did meet with Sky Morse and Bob Stevens of M&S Development in Brattleboro, who say they do this kind of thing. And we had a pleasant conversation. That was on January 7. And I said, what's it going to cost? And they said, well, it's not easy to talk about money, but the simple answer is 35 grand. And so I said, well, that's kind of what we were thinking. So, yeah, but I am hoping we aren't going to flounder trying to do this on our own. But that is where the local option tax income would help us
Correct. Yeah.
be able to hire some help.
Well, I think, one of the things that, you can look at this low-income housing tax credit thing and, either be discouraged or encouraged. But one of the things that you can take from this is, if you were to develop housing that was following this sort of model where a certain percentage of the housing you had to meet these income limits, and probably the rest of the housing is going to be market rate, because that's the only way to make these things work. You have to have some market rate housing mixed in with this stuff. Then clearly the outcome of that is not going to be a big Section 8 apartment building. That's just not how it's going to turn out. It can't turn out that way with this. So, for the people that are worrying about that, they should maybe not worry so much. It's not that, it's not what's going to happen. So.
Well, the other word that goes in with this is called an institutional credit. So you're going to have to be a bank to get it, that you can't give it to your local developer, has a really hard time getting it unless it's handed down by the Wyndham Housing Trust. That's, I think, what makes it hard. There's a limited amount, and being institutional, you can't take a small guy and say, hey, let's build 4 units.
But I
We'll
think
just add that
you get the
Peter's
tax
absolutely
credit,
right, but
you can sell it to the bank.
M&T Bank locally is happy to be our institutional partner. But yeah, you can't do just 4 units. You got to do something bigger.
Would it qualify? I mean, this is for obviously low income. If some of it is market, then it wouldn't apply to that development. So if there were however many units, and I mean, this actually is a fairly complicated, like 20% of,
It's any one of these 3. It's not all of them.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it took me a minute.
Yes.
But you don't have to do all of them. You meet the test by doing any one of those.
Okay, I was like,
Right.
by the end,
Yeah,
what's going to be
no,
left?
no. Yeah, no,
Right.
No.
Wait, that's up to more than 100, right? How's that work?
Oh, it's a long time.
No, and just the, so you can meet it by having 20%
Okay,
occupied
right.
with that. Or if you've got this number who are at 40%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, then 60% is already
Yeah,
counted
no,
by, and the
no.
rest is going to be under 80%. So that would be,
Yeah, no,
everybody
that wouldn't
under.
work, but no,
Okay.
it's one of those.
okay.
Any other questions on the low-income housing tax credit? On to item number 5, market study.
So we are ready to maybe pull together some kind of a little RFP and get somebody in to do our market study. We do think we can get about 50% of it paid for. So we're not talking about a big dollar item. In some of my research, I have found, I think I put it in the email, that there's a couple different kinds of market studies apparently, from what Hannah from SE Group shared with me. We had been focusing on, Preston and I have been focusing on one kind of market study, which is you take a development, you take a project like our big project, and they say, yeah, your municipality or your demand will support, that number of housing. Hannah talked about another type of market study. which was a little bit bigger, that talks a little bit more about Chester specific, what are our housing needs? So my question to you, because those are two very different things. So, my question for you is what kind of a market study do we think we want? Yeah. What kind of market study do you think we want? Which of those two?
Didn't she have a thing of like, being of interest or qualifying? They want to know specifically, some people, they would like to know what Chester specifically
Correct.
needs.
Yes, we need something that is very specific to our town. Developers are gonna need that. If they're using certain types of funding, they're gonna need that. We've got to show that if they build the housing, it's, this was to Cortland's point several months ago, if we're gonna build the housing, we have to know we're gonna be able to rent it or sell it or whatever, there's a demand for it.
Yeah.
And it needs to be Chester specific, not region specific.
So if I was reading what you wrote correctly, the choice essentially is if we are certain that this particular project is one we want to do, you do a market study of whether that is likely to work for us. And the other is broader and saying, what does Chester need, which would leave open multiple projects fitting within that information.
Right.
And I guess my impression has been that while we have a number of things on the table, it didn't feel to me as though we've settled on this is the one thing we're certain we want to do. And if we haven't settled on that, I wasn't really sure how the first type of study would benefit us unless we're prepared now to say, we want the market study for the Allard, is that property?
Yeah.
Or we want the market study for the water tank property. And maybe other people at the table feel differently, but I know I'm not in a place of saying, oh, no, I know this is the one. I'd like the market study to tell me which one is the
Right.
one.
Preston and I think we're thinking that thinking that the first option was the only option we really had, we were thinking, well, if we get a market study done on the biggest project, right, and we end up doing a smaller project, but I don't know.
I don't
if
think
that's
it-
true.
yeah.
I don't
I'm
know
not
that
sure
that's
it
true.
works that way.
I don't
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
I agree with sort of everything that you say. It's kind of a little bit of chicken and egg, right? But we are in, I think, a pretty unique position that we've sort of maybe secured a funding source, right? We're not sitting there, as a group to figure these things out, right?
Right.
We have this potential tech that's coming on. We've raised other money. We have matches and whatnot. You said that I said it when the first day I came in, it was just like, what do we actually need? And I don't even know if a market study can do that, but I think but if they can, and they say there is this need today and this demographic size and this, number of families or this number of single people that would be interested, we then maybe could do some really unique things about potentially. I think Pete brought up last time down by the old skating rink, and you pre-sell those units. And then if it's only 8 units, maybe you don't need to bring a developer in. You can do it with local build. I mean, there's options. We have a lot of options.
Yes.
It feels to me like we have a lot of options with no real understanding yet of what we need to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yes.
So.
Have you seen, I'm sorry. Have you seen those other types of studies that Hannah was referring to?
Not so much.
Yeah.
I haven't so much. I mean, so I think one of the things, like if you wanted the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust specifically to do a project, you'd have to do an appraisal before they could buy it.
Right.
And they're going to need to do this market study before they can get financing.
To that specific project?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Okay.
And I think so West Windsor just did a market study for a specific project. It's $6,000. It wasn't
Yes.
too much.
Yeah.
And it should inform you, what, to some extent, what type of units, make sense for the area and for that site. And I don't know, I kind of think the site-specific market studies gives us enough information that is probably worth doing. And I think it would help, pick a property. Probably you'd want to pick one that the town owns or has some kind of a strong interest in. And that really would help inform what's doable there. And then you can talk to a developer about, hey, look, here, you know, this is what the market study's telling us. This is what it's appraised at, you know.
But if
Yeah,
they,
if I could jump in, when we met with Gus Seelig with the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, he said kind of the same thing that Justin is saying. He said, pick your biggest project, which happens to be one you own, the town water tank property. And he said he thought the marketing study would be comprehensive enough. It would cover other things that you wanted to do. But I also can say that Julie, you sent out these standards from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, and right on the first page, they said, we're happy to advise you on what you need. Call us. So we probably should do that too.
Well, certainly can. What do we think?
Is there any idea of what the cost difference would be between the two?
I didn't even know I had never even entertained the second one as an option, so I have no clue. I know that the first option, the one that we had been running with, because that's what we thought that was what we needed, runs somewhere right around 8,000. That's what we were told. And then we would get about 50% of that paid for the grant.
Yeah, so I mean, before we move on, I guess I'll just share one of the things that Preston and I heard when we met with M&S. So they're a real estate development consulting firm. And they basically have the same approach. They would, in their phase one proposal, which they're saying is, like $30,000 or something.
For
The
consulting
markets,
service.
the market study would be included in that
Oh.
service for that project. So they're not doing the town thing. They're doing you tell me a
Yep.
piece of land.
Yep.
And I'll tell you
Yep.
whether it's gonna pencil out, and then figure out how to get connected to a developer that can actually do it. So that notion that we've been struggling with, that says, we think we have some property, we don't know how to turn the crank to the next thing to figure out if it's gonna work, and then actually partner with a builder to actually do something. So
Mhm.
they made it sound, and they are going to give us a proposal of some sort. We were hoping we would have it before tonight, but it hasn't come through yet. It will actually show, for the $35,000, this is what we would do, this is what it looks like, the deliverables will look like this, sometimes when you do these consulting engagements, if they don't show you what they're gonna produce, and it's kind of wishy-washy and open-ended, then you might not get enough detail to have it be worth the money.
Right.
So I say this all just to say that these folks do the project-based thing.
Right.
Rather than the whole town-based.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And,
The town-based thing is something that Hannah from SE
Yeah.
Group brought up, and we have not been entertaining that today, so.
and so just so for me, I've heard more of we do the project thing than the big thing,
Yeah,
but
me
that
too.
doesn't mean we shouldn't look into the big thing, it's something that can be done. But what M&S said, as sort of their message to us was, and they were a little impressed, and jump in, when this makes sense, but they're not a group that would do work and then pass it off to Wyndham and Windsor. That's not what they do. They actually are the real estate development part of
Yes.
the whole pipeline.
Yes.
And they have found that one of the things that they think is the way this is going to work in Vermont is they want to find projects where they can develop basically market rate senior housing, like the 55 and over
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
places, so that you can get people to move out of the big houses
Mhm.
into
Yep.
something that they don't have to maintain and can deal with and live comfortably and have everything they want, to free up the rambling other houses that families can move into. So they feel like that's sort of a winning approach, and I think they're doing some development. I'm not sure where, I've kind of forgotten where, but they've already got a few projects underway that's using that model of developing market rate housing that's kind of geared towards seniors, to kind of free up the other housing. And one of the things that they used as, that I thought was interesting, because I hadn't really thought about it, was, you might say, I really want to move out of my big old house, but, you know, I don't want to lose my investment in that property. And if I'm going to go to something that's actually a rental, then, you know, how does that work for me? So his example was, if the senior sold their, I'm just going to make this up, $400,000 house and put that into an investment that earned 5%, that's like over $3,000 a month. So you can afford a $3,000 or $3,500 a month apartment without ever touching the principal on the sale of that house. So, I mean, it may not be exactly that way, but the idea is that if people are basically saying, I never want to rent because I'm losing my equity or my investment, but if somebody's really unable to manage a house anymore, and you could tell them, you can have a really nice place where everything's taken care of, and the money that you get from selling your house is never gonna, you're not gonna have to eat into that to support this rental lifestyle for as long as you need. I don't know, I think some people go for that.
That sounds perfect for Kathy Hasbro.
Yeah.
So this M&S, they can do smaller projects to larger projects?
Well, they don't really, I don't think we got into it that far. We got into the point where they sort of talked about their consulting model and what the stages and phases and what each stage and phase would deliver. So we talked mostly about stage one, which is if you hired us to do the initial consulting work, this is what we would do, this is how much it would cost, and this is what you would get when we were done. Which would then lead into, and I think they basically then find the developer, own the project and the property, and then they rent. They're a rental play mostly. They're not, didn't sound like they were doing housing for people to buy. They were doing housing for people to rent. So, Preston, do you have anything else like that you remember that I'm either not saying or getting wrong?
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it very well. I did ask him point blank, what's your relationship with Windsor and Wyndham? And he smiled and said, we're colleagues. We work together on some things. And I said, you know, we've kind of been led to believe that because Wyndham and Windsor is the state's delegated agent for this, contractual agent for this the area, that to get into the queue to get federal tax credits, you have to work with them. And they said, no, that's not true. They said that we've done federal tax credits, and he said it's a competitive program, but it's based on the best financials to produce the best result. And so I said, okay, so that's an interesting angle. But no, I would say I'm still a little unsure whether they would actually end up being the developer or not in terms of like putting up the houses and renting them. I wasn't completely clear on that, or whether they seek another developer.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, really.
The way this model works is they're gonna take a property, you're gonna bring in the property. You're paying them enough to see not only is their market study work, but does the engineering work? Can I get the sewer here? Can I get to that? And what happens is they work from there, and then they become the construction managers, of which they're gonna take a slice of the construction and have it work from there. It's a very typical model. But the thing is if it's a losing project, they immediately lose interest in it. If it's not going to work or it's too expensive, that'll just be the end of it before you even get farther to it.
Yeah, so it sounds like the town could burn 30 grand, which is their stage one part of the program, to figure out this one's a loser or this one's not.
That's true.
But if that's what needs to happen to find
Yeah.
that out, I'd rather find that out.
Yeah.
Well, but you can pick one that can win.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if,
Yeah.
You want to say something?
I was just saying, I just wanted to say during the Chester Fair, when I was speaking to people at the booth, mostly what I heard is people who had large houses who couldn't keep up with them, but they didn't want to move out of their town or move to Florida or something. So that's mostly what I heard from people. They wanted smaller dwellings in Chester so that they could they love the town, they want to stay here,
Yeah.
and their houses are just sort of.
And that's what these M&S guys were talking about. How do you stay in town, but get out of the big old expensive, hard to maintain place? So,
So I've heard more than once, we talk about affordability, right? We talk about the senior, the seniors, tying in with what you just said, Hugh, and with the tax credits and all that sort of stuff. We have currently in this town senior housing, and we currently have in this town Pleasant Brook, right, which is in theory, right? We have not.
That's market rate.
Talking about market rate. So we're talking about what do we need? We're talking about what is the need out there. And I personally would feel, I think my just perspective might be enlightened or different if I knew that Pleasant Brook had a 300-person waiting list and the senior center had a 71-person waiting list. Like right there, that puts it in a whole nother category to me. So can we touch base with those people and get some idea of because they're the only two things in town currently that are sort of in this world, right? So we already have them. Not that we wouldn't make something better or bigger or different or more multi-use or all that kind of stuff, but we have 3,000 people in this town, right? And that's what our population is. So it's small enough. I think we should be able to like identify the 114 people that need housing, right? I mean,
Yeah, but the only thing I would say to that is like, because I mean, I'm not that old yet, but I'm getting there. I would never live in Pleasant Brook or the senior housing because I have money.
two different things.
I want to live somewhere else.
Understood.
Nicer.
Yeah, no.
I don't want my house anymore because I can't take care of it.
But your problem is equally as important as these other ones. But I think we got it isn't, but this problem, we already are trying to solve this. We already have infrastructure in place in this town that are solving these two problems. So how burdened is it? If it's not burdened, if they're like, oh my God, we could take a bunch of people tomorrow, then we got to think about what we're doing.
The senior
I agree
housing,
with that.
the senior housing place may also be able to tell us, how often do you get calls for market rate?
I tried that already.
They didn't know?
They were very tight chest. They didn't want to tell me.
Okay.
So I
Would
think
you mind if I reach out to them?
Yeah.
Do you send me her number or whatever, or person's number? That'd be awesome.
I politely asked, like, what's the waiting time? They're very dodgy and just, they didn't want to.
when we talked about this about a year ago, that several years ago, when my mother-in-law was moving up here and got on the waiting list for the senior housing. And they told her when she was applying for it, because her income qualified her for their rates as well, that it could be anywhere from 3 months to 9 months, depending on that they're full, and it depends on when somebody leaves for whatever reason. And for us, it turned out that they had something available in like 8 weeks. I mean, it wasn't very long, but I've heard from other people that it does tend to run in that 3 to 6 month range. And occasionally you see them advertise. And I believe that they advertise when they have more people, more units available than they have a waiting list. Sure. But they are not willing to share that in a
That seems like
general way.
mind-boggling to me why they wouldn't want it, why would they wouldn't do it. Like, what is the downside of sharing that information with us at a high level? And then Pleasant Brook, who manages that? Who manages the leasing of those units?
SK Management Services.
Yeah, so
I mean, in hindsight, we're competitors to them. That's why they don't want to give out their
It
data.
could be. It could be. I know on the market rate side, because when Dad died, Mom was looking at leaving the house, and she does not qualify for subsidized housing, and she was on the closest place that she could find was in Rutland, at the Maples in Rutland, and the waiting list for a market rate 2 unit was 2.5 years.
Wow. My mother-in-law's doing that in Boston right now. Her name, she has no interest in going anywhere. Her name's already on 2 lists because she's waiting for.
Because it's so long. That's what we did with Mom. We just put her on there early, knowing it was going to take forever. So I can tell you, market rate senior housing, there's very little around, and
But so then we go through all this process and we find out like, holy shit, that's what we need here.
Yeah.
Market rate senior housing, and then we go to a developer and we go up to the water park thing. We build a 50
thing and have a shuttle that runs to town every 15
That's
minutes.
really what
Like,
you,
that's, you know.
that, to me, that is what people do, because the amount of money that you can make to be subsidized is really low.
Yeah.
Really low. So,
So
yeah.
I have
If
the
you
email.
invested it all for yourself for retirement with Social Security and then what you're, like,
Yeah, you're not
you're,
getting
you're,
in.
you're out of it very easy.
Valley Village has quite a waiting list for independent living in
Mhm.
Townsend.
Mhm.
So they have 36 units. I sent the senior housing. And I sent an email October 12th, 24. And I introduced myself and I said, here's some questions. We're looking for answers. How long's the waiting list? What's the normal length of stay? You have all one-bedroom units. Has there been a demand for larger units? How often do units become available? And I said, you know, basically a little more fluff. I know they're broad questions. And then the reply was, in response to your email, the Chester Apartments is our senior housing for 62 or older or disabled of any age. All the units are one bedroom. We do not have any that are larger. The wait list at this time is 6 months to a year. We do have income guidelines that we have to follow for the property. The lease is signed for 1 year at a time. If someone's going to vacate, they're given 30-day written notice, so we do not know of any vacancies until that is received. If you'd like a brochure and our application for reference, please, provide me a mailing. So that was what I got out.
So they gave us something.
That's a good response. I
Yeah,
mean,
they gave us something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I don't know, I feel like, market rate senior housing is a definite, I'm not totally sure what other mixes of housing Chester needs, but I think that's a definite. I think to me, the question is, what do we need to do to show a developer to want to do a project? Right? And so I think if we did a market study for, say, the water tank property, and it tells us, yeah, that's going to work. If you do some market rate senior housing, and it's feasible, and here's what the rents could be, and whatever, that helps. That's my 2 cents. I think that's a helpful thing.
Do we want to wait and see what what M&S proposal is? Or do we want to,
If they're going to do it anyway,
If they're
that'll be
gonna do it-
another way.
but we got to
ahead.
go under contract for the 30,000, 35,000, but we're going to have to go there to move anything along. We're going to have to go with this.
That sounds good to me. If what we're going to get is something that will be useful, if it turns out that when we look at the cost benefit of the infrastructure and the roads and all the rest of it, decide that you don't want to do the water tank property, will we get enough from the demographic analysis to feel that we do know what would be useful? It sounds like we would, that
I'm not 100% certain by any means, but I think so.
What's the starting point?
Yeah, well, Preston, what do you think about waiting to see what M&S provides us in terms of a proposal? And then deciding about how we want to move forward with a different sort of.
This meeting is a good kickoff point for me to follow up with them and say, we had this meeting. We're serious about working with you. Can you please give us a proposal and see what happens?
Yeah, let's do that.
What does everybody think about that? See what they, just see what,
Yeah,
what
makes
it
sense.
is
See what they'll
and,
do. And
right.
Yeah.
well, and then
And you recall, Hugh, that the name was a phase 1 proposal. Is that what they called it?
They called it stage 1.
Stage 1. Okay. Nice to use the right words.
Because you can get a pretty easy proposal because these guys are looking to become the construction manager. So
Yeah.
you can show them a project and it'll turn or it won't turn, and just show it to them first and they'll take the bait. I think Dennis Allard's piece, they'll grab right on. There's a lot of potential there for a multi-phase project.
is it MSK or Stevens and Associates?
Is it MS?
It's M&S Development out of Brattleboro. They also said we're not, I think one of Preston's first questions was, we're looking for somebody that does something like what White and Burke does, something like that. And they said that really got them going. They said, yeah, we're not doing what White and Burke is doing. I don't know what that meant, but remember that, Preston?
I remember it well. Yeah, they reacted real strongly. They said, no, we're absolutely not White and Burke. We don't do what White and Burke does.
Well, they must be competitors.
Folks in the room can know White and Burke is the go-to firm if you want to do big complicated projects, but they're a little overwhelmed right now, and they're up in Burlington, and it just sort of felt like if we could work with a company in Brattleboro, it felt a little more homey.
Williamsburg is also one of the most expensive in New England.
The thing is you're gonna bring your friends in because you're gonna do the market study, and then the next thing is you're bringing your friends, the engineer, and they're gonna recommend their engineer and then their architect, and then their structure of people builds from there.
Yeah.
There was one thing I wanted to just add, listening to all of this, is I understand selling the big $400,000 house to get into a senior rental, but selling the big $400,000 house doesn't help out the young people that are trying to find a place here in town. Because that's going to bring in, unless it's somebody who's in their first home and they want to move up to a bigger house, and then that first home gets sold to a first-time buyer. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all, the only thing
I
I'm
don't, I
thinking.
totally agree with you, and I don't know if I had that conversation with these guys, but yeah, if you have not a starter home, but a more expensive home, then when that goes on the market, it's not gonna be the cop who buys that.
The biggest issue with real estate is the cost to renovate. And so if someone can afford what used to be an affordable house is $250, now they're $350, and you look at the $350 and you got to put $150 into it. So there's no way that anyone can. There's no such thing as a $350 house that you can move in and feel good about living there without trying to make some changes to it.
Well, you may be able to speak to this a little bit. Are there people that'll still buy a house and fix it up? Do people still fix up houses, or nobody has those skills anymore? I'm just curious, because I know my kids couldn't buy a house and fix it
No,
up.
yes, you are correct. And what's maddening for me to see people come in during the past 5-6 years, buy the house that someone should have bought locally, put bubble gum and lipstick on it, and then turn around and sell it for the 500 or 600. And that drives me bananas, because I go into the house, I go, I remember when this sold for $250, and you're looking around, you're just thinking, I feel bad for whoever pays this amount of money for it. So
Okay.
it would be nice. There are younger people getting in the trades that can do that, but
Okay.
it's a slow start to that trend.
Yeah.
Then you also have to have two incomes to afford it in the first place, so
Yep.
taking, the time and all that. And also, it's very hard to find people, if you aren't doing it, to do it. I mean, the work,
It's interesting. Well, we're not going to solve the larger problems, but I just was going over with a new agent today about land gains tax. Be interesting if there was some way to do a flip tax on that would prevent that sort of thing from happening, but we're not going to solve that.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment, because we certainly had the experience of having, in the time I was in the school system, had at least a dozen people over those years who wanted to accept a job and had to turn it down because there was nowhere to live. And people who had enough income in two incomes to be able to buy a $350,000, $400,000 house moved here. But individuals who were either single new teachers or just starting out looking for a place to rent or to buy inexpensively, they would accept the job offer and then have to back out of it again because there was nowhere to rent. There was nowhere to buy affordably. And I think things have changed a little bit. We certainly had people in the last 2 years who've been able to find a place to rent somewhere within, 15-minute drive, but it's still really tight.
There are plenty of people. I've been working with a young man who works at in Ludlow for a nonprofit, and he keeps pulling up houses 250, 275, and we go there, and it's just, and he's like 6'3", and some of those houses have ceilings that are 5'8". But it's discouraging for young people to try to find a house to buy, let alone rent. But
There are rentals in town. I mean, I went through the Redex house, with Gary the other day to look at that building. There's 5 rental units in there. Place is empty. It's empty.
Is it still available for
Still
sale?
for sale. And they just dropped the.
Which
price.
one? Is this the one at Newsbag?
Yeah.
That's still for sale?
Contract, I think.
Oh, it is?
Okay, so, 'cause I was thinking,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, hopefully somebody, I mean, I walked through all the units. I mean, you could rent them all tomorrow.
Yeah, that is a mystery why it was on for,
So what's the problem there?
No problem. I'm just saying, like,
No,
it's.
Yeah, but that,
Why
you
aren't they
know,
renting?
Why aren't they renting? Because they're not real estate people. They're news
No.
They have this building and they heat it and one guy lives there and then Dan's got an apartment downstairs that nobody's ever in. I mean, it's.
And they're not trying to rent it, they're trying to sell it. And as you said, the people trying to buy it want to see a record
Yeah.
of rental, and there's no record, and
Yeah, the banks want to see that too.
Right.
yeah,
Thanks.
it's automatically.
I mean, it's pretty nice. I mean, compared to a lot of other apartment buildings I've seen, like it's not a super heavy lift. I mean, they're decent apartments. I mean, they could all use a hug, but they're not like disgusting.
Rentals have gotten really expensive. The Masonic Temple, the new 3-bedroom, bath and a half or whatever, $2,200 a month plus utilities.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wow.
That's a $450,000 mortgage right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're seeing that rent in White River is the same as my daughter's in San Diego. Same rent.
Right?
Yeah.
Same as San Diego.
Yeah.
Oh.
Crazy. Go to San Diego. Come on.
Oh, my goodness.
Yikes.
that's what's happened. The rent around here is
It's crazy.
similar to very high marketplaces, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's just such a limit. You have to take what you can get. I mean, it's, you don't have like, oh, I think I'll take this or that. It's like,
No.
take it now, or it's the
It's
person
gone,
right behind
yeah.
you is getting it, yeah.
Any other points of interest on the market study? What did we,
We're gonna wait and see if we can get that M&S developer, get their proposal for the next meeting,
okay,
see what they're gonna do.
And if you guys will share the contacts of Pleasant Brook and the senior with me, not that you didn't do an awesome job, but I'm gonna try to persuade.
I softened them
information.
up for you.
Huh?
I softened them
Sounds like
up.
it. Sounds like it.
Okay, we are on to the board member tasks, old business. I had reached out, there was an article, I think it was on the radio about Rutland's success. One of the companies did write back, it was Evernorth out of Burlington. And she replied back and pointed me to Peter Paggy, did I pronounce
Windsor
that?
Housing
Which
Trust.
is already,
They-
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
working
yeah,
with
with
them,
them,
so.
yeah, yep.
And the other company never replied back, but I followed through with that. And we put Penrose, that was the company that we put in the back burner. They're looking for bigger projects. If we go down, we had talked about, I don't know why this is under task and old business. So Jason will follow up with Jonah Richards. Jason provided town staff with contact information. I don't know if you want to go over.
Yeah, I didn't do the Jonah thing, but I did talk to Kevin Purcell briefly, and we connected, and he said he probably wouldn't do a project here, but he'd be happy to talk with us and help us out. And then I think I gave you the baton and I dropped it. I don't know.
Well,
what
if you gave me the
happened.
baton, I definitely.
I think we
won't
dropped the
run it.
baton as well. So we can follow up.
Definitely not in that
We
relay.
can follow up.
So yeah, let me know what baton you
Yeah.
gave me and I
So-
will pick it back up.
As a refresher, this gentleman,
I definitely, well, I didn't have time to deal with it either.
Jonah Richards, was someone that worked on smaller units. And he did the 4 to 6 to 8 units in and around Lebanon.
Yeah, he does great work
He
and
rehabbed buildings mainly. He would,
rehabs, yeah.
he didn't build, he was going into existing buildings,
He's
right?
doing a little bit more building now, but yeah, he does really nice kind of smaller projects, 6, 12 units kind of thing. He's based out of Thetford or Fairleigh. So I don't know that he'd do work here, but he could help us to kind of figure out how to get started or what's a developer looking for, but he's kind of the state's poster child for.
Well, wouldn't he do work
these
here?
things. We could ask him.
Maybe we just need to talk to him.
got
Maybe we
that-
need Cortland to
Maybe,
persuade
yeah,
him.
maybe.
That smaller fire, right?
What was that? I'm
Where
sorry.
the place burned down, that was
Yeah.
gonna be a small project.
That would be a small project,
Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. Well, do we want to see if we can get him to come to a meeting?
I could try. Yeah.
Sure,
You want him on the next one?
sure.
All right.
Okay.
Do that.
Did anyone have a task that they're holding in their pocket and want to reveal whether they did it or didn't do it?
Yeah, I don't think I had it.
Yeah, the person who won a sleigh ride, I had their phone number. I talked to them this summer and they have disappeared.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
That's too bad.
We checked.
I've asked for permission to put a jar in my little
Yeah.
shop. I have an envelope. It doesn't have a lot in it, but it says $49.11.
Thank you. Awesome. Nice.
I'll put it in the trust fund.
Yep, yeah, there you go.
Great.
Lots of ones.
I don't know. I spoke to a guy in Barry who has a company called Upend This. I don't know if we talked about this before. He does construction of smaller units. I printed out a couple, and it's appealing just because they vary, and you can do one or two. They're very small, and they start at 480 square feet, but that is $105,000 for the unit. And I have a feeling he's he's projecting all these buildings. I think he's done this one, so that he's got a plan, and it's good. He was in Johnson, now he's in Barry. He was very informative and said, he'd be happy to talk to jump in a meeting if needed. I think this is a bit in the distance, but I think that they are pretty attractive. And also he said they're built for Vermont. They are insulated well because some of the other ones and the house that they're. So I don't know, kind of rooting for them. They got pushed out of their first place with the flood, and then they were in Johnson. He's just been struggling to get back on his feet, but it sounds like pretty good model, pretty good.
Nationwide, there's these pop-up companies that are making
Yeah.
smaller homes, and they're all over the place. Some are more established than others, but definitely viable if we can tie into one.
What's smaller?
I mean, as far as smaller house or smaller company?
No, it's like, thinking about the discussions we've had about what we need and where the gaps are, and there was a time when if you had a family, even like one kid or two kids, you needed like 1,200 square feet, or like a 12 to 1,400 square foot 2-bedroom ranch, like the cheapest thing you could get. But these things are smaller than that, right?
Well, this one
So
is 1,300 square feet and is
Okay.
projected at 287. Complete.
287?
Yeah, but that's the whole, it's wired, it's got all the kitchen, electric. You do have to prep the site and you have to arrange someone to,
Oh, but so it's got all the,
yeah, it's fully, it's like a mobile home, but it has a bit of a,
But you had mentioned one at 400.
yeah,
square
that's
feet.
really, and that is
At a-
just,
at 100,000,
it's kind of like
yeah.
exiting homeless. I mean, if you have
Right.
nothing,
okay.
500 square feet looks pretty good. Or even for people that are coming in, like some of the workforce housing, it may be just a thing to get settled and then,
But if you're single maybe though, or?
yeah, if you're single, but even, 500 square feet, that's pretty small.
I think a good ADU though.
1,200, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I talked to him about. I was.
There's the valid point right
And
there.
those are good. They do just, simple, just helical screw.
Yeah,
Foundation, like it's
right.
pretty
They,
cheap.
they put like posts and
Yeah.
land them. Yeah, but I mean, the idea that you don't, he literally said, if we were gonna move forward right now, the house would be up and ready in 6 months. So once he gets busy, I'm not sure that would last, but right now he said, and that's including allowing for, the site to be prepped and estimates to be made, and you have to put the driveway or whatever.
Is he stick building on site?
No, they do boxes
Modular.
and then they come down and construct it, but because it's just the box form, they can be Ls. They do have a second one with 2 stories. You can add you know, if you wanted to add on a garage, those kinds of things. But the base, I mean, and then you're up into 400 if you're gonna do that, but it is good to go. And I can tell you that just getting all that water, I mean, forget the expense, the time and the trying to connect and get the electricity up, it's appealing. And similar to, say, a mobile home or a manufactured home,
So
it is a
it's put
manufactured.
together, it has the plumbing, it has
Yeah.
the wiring, it
It has
has.
a kitchen and there, you know, the stuff, you know, it's
Okay.
pretty basic, but it is nice looking inside and let's see, it actually takes off the ground. There's another one in Claremont. There are some that are further away and they will ship, but this guy is close and he would partner with a developer if it got to be a project. He doesn't do the sort of, if it's one person, you know, but.
You bring up a valid point of our committee has been very focused on raw land. Whereas a committee, we also have a responsibility to help educate the townspeople about accessory dwelling units. So maybe we need to put some of that back on our table to educate the public, to say there are some options. We should have some examples. We can, should somehow get in front of the public to say, hey, there are options. The town will allow you to put an accessory dwelling unit. So maybe next meeting, we can spend some time, and if people come up with their ideas, we can have that as one of the topics to see what ideas we can come up with as to how to make that part of our agenda.
You mean to promote
Campaign.
that, to get someone to put one on their house to then rent?
Correct, because our job is we're trying to find affordable housing, and we are focused on all the raw land and getting people in, but the public doesn't, there's a good chance that many of the townspeople would like info about how they could put an ADU unit in and how it's fairly easy to do. And just having that option or the info, I think is a good vehicle for us to get it out to the public.
It would be a benefit for people to have a better understanding of just what everything costs now. Because if you're not currently shopping yourself, then awareness, that people have this idea that everything costs so much more. But if you're not engaged in the process of it and understanding of what it costs to build a house and how absurdly high that has jumped in a short period of time is something I'm not sure everybody understands.
Maybe a roadmap of saying, your property could qualify for an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Here's the first step, and then we kind of bridge how, and that will, if they're interested, it's going to catch their attention. They're going to follow through the flow chart and say, wow, this could be something I could put on my property. So why don't we, again, what I suggest is we're not going to solve that tonight, but everyone put their thinking caps on. Next meeting, we can kind of come up with more ideas for that.
I can reach out to someone I know who has a similar type business up north a little bit. Just get some information.
Yeah, it's a great model. And it is, I think, becoming more, I've seen a couple, and I think it's, it's addressing a need and the cost. And I appreciate also, I mean, of course, he has prices, so it's not just like, well, we'll look at the site and, he's got to project it and by the foot, it's about 300 square feet, but it's complete. So.
Well, the second part of the problem here is preventing everyone from going short-term rentals with this accessory dwelling.
Right.
So the town,
Right.
that's the question, how do we as a town educate people to accessory dwelling units, but also create a path that they're going to rent it to someone there full time?
Well, that's the
You've got the
incentive of the-
registration.
Yeah, and there's the incentive of the loan forgiveness, that whole, if you rent to someone for 5 years under, market value, someone exiting homelessness, it's forgiven over 5, or if you do it a different way, it's over 10, it's $50,000 or 75 if you build an accessible unit, like for older folks. But, I have to say, I've thought about this a fair amount, and there is a risk to rent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge part, and Vermont is not supportive.
Right.
They're supportive of the tenants. And I have to say, if I brought one of these on, I'd be like, I could have someone in and out and never gonna have to pay their bills while they don't do anything. So that's unfortunate, and that's something we're not gonna change. It's just, I think personally, that's that is where we stop. I'm kind of like, I do not want, and of course but we know people, there's always a story of the, terrible tenant. So, I don't know if there's anything that can, it's a state issue. It's not us. We can't fix it in Chester, but
But I think back to the idea of, I wouldn't want to promote one business over another necessarily as a public body, but, if we had Preferred Building Systems has an ADU and their costs are this, and here's these guys and their costs are this, and like if we could have a few sort of examples like that available to folks. And even longer term thinking, let's say the town creates some little seed money grant thing, and it just says, hey, this will $10,000 will help you with your site development cost, but you got to agree that it's not short-term rental, or whatever. Something like that. I think those are some things to think about.
Yeah, definitely, and that's in the incentive for the grant is to keep it for people who need it, and also not above market rate. So it could be a working person. It doesn't necessarily. They have some, whatever. You probably know more about it than me, but yeah, I think that's great to give some options and also to look realistically. What is this? We're talking about a number of things. The 4 units or bigger or single. We talked about tiny houses. To really get down to, okay, what is the, if we're just getting to forget all the site study and the market study, it's like, okay, what would it be to put a house on the lot and just have it be a freestanding house, which, most people would prefer, and what would the rent be fairly and how really, and again, for the other businesses, maybe more established than this guy starting out. So, but the idea of it is promising, and I think it looks better than some of the options. They look like real houses, because they have the character where they can be different. So they're not every house is.
Who owns the armory in town, the old armory?
J&L Metrology. They're out of Springfield.
They just bought the building.
They bought the building from the military.
Yeah.
And they had intended to move J&L here. And then I forget what happened. Something happened and they just never moved it. And this ended up just being their storage facility.
Okay. Sorry, it was random, but.
So that's okay.
What was the name of that company?
J&L Metrology. It's J&L out of Springfield.
Do we have any other new business or things to add to the next agenda? No? Then I make a motion to adjourn, or does someone make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion here, Jim.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.
No. That for you? Yeah, I will take it and have the ladies deposit it. $49.11.